When we think of Abraham, names like Sarah and Hagar often come to mind. But there's another woman in his life, Keturah, a mysterious figure crucial to his legacy, yet largely forgotten. Who was she, and why is her story overlooked? Let's uncover the hidden threads of her remarkable role in history. Keturah's introduction in Genesis 25:1 is tantalizingly brief. Abraham took another wife, whose name was Keturah. With no fanfare or dramatic backstory, this mysterious figure steps into the patriarch's life with a swirl of questions. Who was she, and why does Scripture provide so little about her? Some scholars believe Keturah was a Canaanite woman, a surprising possibility given Abraham's earlier insistence that Isaac not marry from among the Canaanites. This theory suggests Abraham's later years may have reflected a broader understanding of God's promises, perhaps signaling a shift in his relationships and legacy building. Others argue that Keturah was originally a concubine, elevated to the status of wife after Sarah's death. This idea aligns with Genesis 25:6, which mentions Abraham's concubines in plural. Elevating her to wife would have given her a position of honor and secured provisions for her children. But the plot thickens with a fascinating rabbinic tradition, suggesting that Keturah might actually be Hagar, returned to Abraham under a new name symbolizing reconciliation and purification. The name Keturah, derived from a word meaning incense, evokes images of a pleasing offering, perhaps representing a redemptive chapter in Abraham's story. If true, this interpretation cast her in a role of extraordinary emotional and spiritual significance, embodying healing and forgiveness in Abraham's family. Despite being the mother of 6 sons, Zimran, Jokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua, who became founders of nations, Keturah's story remains in the shadows. The Bible's focus on Isaac as the child of the covenant likely relegated her to the margins. Yet, her presence fulfilled God's promise to make Abraham the father of many nations. The mystery of Keturah's identity adds excitement and depth to the narrative, challenging us to think beyond the main figures and recognize the silent threads weaving through history. Whether she was a new wife, a reconciled Hagar, or a concubine elevated to honor, Keturah's story brims with untold significance, proving that even those overlooked by history can leave an indelible mark on God's grand design. The forgotten mother of nations. Keturah's role as the forgotten mother of nations is a profound yet often overlooked aspect of Abraham's legacy. Despite the Bible's sparse mention of her, her influence is undeniable, as she bore Abraham 6 sons. These sons became the ancestors of tribes and nations that played significant roles in shaping the ancient Near East. Each name carries a legacy, woven into the broader tapestry of history. Take Midian, one of Keturah's sons, as a striking example. The Midianites became a prominent group in biblical history, often interacting with and influencing the Israelites. Moses, one of the central figures of the Bible, found refuge among the Midianites after fleeing Egypt. There, he married Zipporah, the daughter of Jethro, a Midianite priest, intertwining Keturah's lineage with the foundational story of Israel. This connection highlights how Keturah's descendants were integral to pivotal moments in the biblical narrative, even if they were not part of the covenantal line through Isaac. The Midianites' role extends beyond Moses, as they are involved in various interactions, conflicts, and alliances with Israel throughout Scripture, underscoring their influence. However, Keturah's sons are often categorized as lesser heirs compared to Isaac, the child of the covenant, and Ishmael, who also receives significant narrative attention. Genesis 25:5-6 explains this distinction. Abraham gave all he had to Isaac, but to the sons of his concubines Abraham gave gifts, and while he was still living, he sent them away from his son Isaac eastward to the east country. This action, while appearing harsh, could reflect a deliberate and pragmatic move by Abraham to secure the covenant through Isaac, ensuring that his other sons did not challenge Isaac's role as the heir of God's promise. By sending them eastward, Abraham may have also been enabling them to establish their own domains, fulfilling God's promise that Abraham would be the father of many nations. The narrative raises questions about favoritism and fairness, yet it also underscores the complexity of Abraham's family dynamics. Keturah's sons, though not central to the covenant, were far from insignificant. Their descendants became influential builders of nations, leaving a legacy that shaped the ancient world. Keturah's story challenges us to recognize the broader impact of those who operate in the periphery of history, often laying foundations for the future in ways that go unnoticed. The omission of Keturah's detailed story in the Bible raises intriguing questions about her role and why she is overshadowed in Abraham's narrative. In a patriarchal society where lineage, inheritance, and divine promises were central, it's unsurprising that the narrative prioritizes Isaac, the son of promise through Sarah. Isaac's role as the covenantal heir places him squarely in the spotlight, while Keturah and her descendants are positioned as tangential to this primary focus. Yet, they remain vital in illustrating Abraham's fulfillment of God's promise to make him the father of many nations. Some scholars argue that Keturah's relative obscurity reflects the Bible's theological priorities, rather than a dismissal of her importance. The scriptural narrative is driven by its primary concern, to trace the covenantal lineage that leads to Israel, and ultimately, to Christ. Detailing Keturah's life or her descendants' exploits might have distracted from this focus. This perspective emphasizes the Bible's role as a theological document rather than a comprehensive historical account. While this approach leaves figures like Keturah in the shadows, her brief inclusion serves a purpose, showing that God's blessings and promises extend beyond the central figures of the covenant. Even in her understated presence, Keturah's story subtly conveys a deeper truth. God often works in ways that escape the immediate spotlight. Through Keturah, Abraham's legacy reaches beyond the covenant with Isaac, extending into the broader world as her descendants establish their own tribes and nations. This reminds us that God's plans are multifaceted, involving not just the main characters but also those who operate quietly in the margins. Keturah's inclusion, though brief, underscores that the fulfillment of God's promises doesn't rely solely on the well-known or celebrated, but often involves those whose stories remain untold or underexplored. Her legacy encourages us to look beyond what's immediately visible and recognize the unseen threads of God's plan in history and our own lives. Keturah's story serves as a poignant reminder that significance doesn't always come with applause or fanfare. In a world that often elevates the loudest voices and the most dramatic narratives, Keturah's quiet yet impactful presence challenges us to find value in faithfulness and the unseen contributions that shape legacies. Her life teaches us that even those who seem to exist in the margins of history play a critical role in God's grand design. She was a mother to nations, a pivotal yet understated figure in the legacy of Abraham, and her story invites us to reflect on the power of quiet influence. Keturah's narrative also reveals a profound truth. God's plan includes everyone. While Isaac, as the child of promise, holds the central role in the covenant, Keturah's sons were still a vital part of Abraham's broader legacy. They became founders of tribes and nations, fulfilling God's promise to make Abraham the father of many nations. This demonstrates that God's blessings often ripple outward, extending far beyond the individuals or events in the spotlight. Her story reminds us that God's purposes are not limited to those with prominent roles. Instead, they encompass a wide, interconnected web of lives, each contributing in unique and meaningful ways. Moreover, Keturah's relative obscurity highlights an essential spiritual lesson. Faith in the margins is still faith that matters. Just as her significance is not diminished by the brevity of her mention, our own contributions, whether noticed or not, can have lasting impacts. In our own lives, we may never fully see the fruits of our actions or how they influence future generations. Keturah's story encourages us to remain faithful, trusting that even in the quiet or hidden moments, Our lives are woven into a larger divine narrative. She challenges us to value faithfulness over recognition, and to find peace in knowing that God works through all, often in ways that defy human understanding. Modern relevance of Keturah's story. Keturah's story carries striking relevance in today's world, where women's voices, particularly those operating behind the scenes, are often overlooked. Her inclusion in the biblical narrative challenges us to question whose stories remain untold, and to celebrate those whose contributions shape legacies quietly yet significantly. By highlighting her presence, we are reminded to honor the unseen builders of history, both past and present. Keturah also reflects the complexities of blended families, a dynamic familiar to many modern households. Abraham's later years with her and their children mirror today's challenges of balancing relationships, inheritance, and legacy amid diversity. Her sons, while not part of the covenant line, were still integral in fulfilling Abraham's role as a father of nations. This dynamic resonates with modern families, striving to honor individual contributions while maintaining unity. Moreover, Keturah represents renewal in Abraham's life, showing that new chapters can arise after great loss. Her descendants, though separated from Isaac's covenant path, played pivotal roles in shaping ancient history. This reminds us that legacies often unfold in multiple, interconnected ways, rather than through a single line. Keturah's story encourages us to value all contributions, embrace complexity, and find strength in diverse, blended narratives. Keturah may be a forgotten wife, but her story is far from insignificant. She represents the quiet strength and enduring legacy that shapes history, often without recognition. Through her sons, she fulfilled Abraham's destiny as the father of nations, proving that God's plans extend beyond the spotlight. So, what does Keturah's story mean for us today? It's a challenge to look beyond the surface, to value the overlooked, and to trust that our contributions, no matter how small, play a part in God's greater story. And now we turn to you. What do you think about Keturah's role in Abraham's life? Have we been too quick to overlook her contributions? Or is her quiet presence part of her spiritual legacy? Let us know in the comments below. And if you found this story as fascinating as we did, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden figures of the Bible. Who knows what other treasures lie in its pages waiting to be uncovered?